Roberta Blevins, thank you so much for coming on to Talk Beliefs all the way from San Diego, California. You are a former trainer with LuLaRoe, a multi-level marketing company, and were one of the few who were successful, but are now an anti-MLM advocate, speaking out and warning others about the potential harm of companies like LuLaRoe and others, companies that are often described as controlling and even cult-like. Well, Roberta, in recent years, you've appeared not only on a Vice documentary all about MLMs, but also the highly rated LuLaRich docuseries from Amazon Studios. So has this exposure boosted interest in your crusade to expose the harm of MLMs?
Hi, thank you for having me. Absolutely. It's been incredible. I've been speaking out for about 4.5 years, and probably I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, it's really gotten big. It's really sort of exploded. The whole movement has gotten so many people. We're reaching so many people who are in these groups. And films like the Vice documentary and LuLaRich absolutely pique a lot of people's interest. I think they're like, wait a second, I think I was in one of these, or my mom did this, you know, and it's bringing a lot of people to the movement, and it's opening up a lot of eyes.
Well, before we talk about what exactly MLMs are and how they operate, let's just hear a little bit about your background. Roberta, what was life like before and leading up to your first encounter with a multi-level marketing company?
My first encounter with a multi-level marketing company was probably when I was a baby. They've been legal for a very long time, even before I was born. And so I have just sort of been privy to having MLMs in my life, very commonplace. My aunt sold Mary Kay. My mom was part of her downline. We did the whole thing, Tupperware, Cutco, Avon. It's everywhere in our house. Like, it just was growing up, and it's just very normal. I never saw a problem with any of it. I just thought it was a way that moms made money on the side. That's always how I had sort of looked at it and thought about it. And I want to say it was 2014. It was the first time that I was actually really interested in actually hearing the pitch and maybe asking more questions and saying, I might want to do this. It was with the company It Works. My dad had passed about a year earlier, and it was a very, very hard year. I was told a daddy's girl, so I took it very hard, very depressed. And I had gained a bunch of weight, and I was still in that whole toxic diet culture aspect of life, and felt like I needed to diet and I needed to lose weight. And in that vulnerability, MLM was able to sort of reach across that gap and get me. So It Works was the first one that I did. I very quickly realized that this was not for me. It was very scammy. It was exactly what I expected it to be in that Mary Kay replicated website. Everybody's selling the same thing all the time kind of thing. Yeah. And I was not interested in it at all. I made maybe $700. I probably spent close to that as well. And I left. And it wasn't until about a year later, when I was introduced to LuLaRoe, that I ever even thought about doing another multi-level marketing company. And it literally was because LuLaRoe looked nothing like It Works. And had LuLaRoe looked just like It Works, I would have never signed up. But it was different because we didn't have replicated websites. Everything was limited edition. Everything was different. There were new things coming out all the time. If I had something that somebody else wanted, and you know what I mean? Like, if I had something that somebody wanted, I could give it to them. But if I had something that maybe someone else wanted, like another consultant could reach out to me and say, hey, I've got a customer that wants this and I don't have it. I'm going to pass the sale on to you. And that doesn't really normally happen in a multi-level marketing company because everyone sells the same things. So that was a positive. That to me, I was like, oh, this isn't like It Works, or this isn't like Mary Kay. It's different. And that's really important to think right there, and to know that sometimes they look different. And when they look different, maybe your guard isn't up the same way it would be if something else approached you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was a big one for me, where I was like, wait a second, this looks different. I could probably do this. Also, it was a newer company. There weren't a ton of people in it. I felt like it was quote unquote ground floor, which is something that they like to say and use as a recruitment tactic. And I fell for all of it. I was incredibly vulnerable. I had not gotten over the grief of losing my father. I had not gotten over any of it. And I was really looking for community. My daughter was very young. I was a new wife. And I just felt very lost and vulnerable. And really, that's all you need to be susceptible to something like this, is vulnerability.
Right. For anyone who doesn't know or who isn't exactly sure, how would you describe a multi-level marketing company, or MLM, and how do they work?
So a multi-level marketing company is most commonly known as a legal pyramid scheme. And that's exactly what they are. They are pyramid schemes that are protected by the government. That is the shortest answer I can give you. And most people are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But for those that are still like, okay, but what does that still mean? A pyramid scheme is a type of investment fraud, similar to a Ponzi scheme, where the money is trickled upwards toward the people that got in early, and the people that get in last are usually the ones that lose. But like I said earlier, there was a ruling, and MLMs became legal, or these types of pyramid schemes became legal in 1979 when Amway was sued by the FTC for being a pyramid scheme and using deceptive business practices. And in that case, Amway unfortunately won the case. And what happened was there was a set of rules that were set into place. Before this, there was another case with a company called Costcott. And originally that case had set the fundamental rules of what is and isn't a pyramid scheme. And then Amway sort of came in, and the case took a couple years, and there was a lot of battle between what these rules were and what it would mean. But essentially Amway did win. And what happened were there was a set of rules that were put into place. And the rules basically are that if you want to be an MLM, you have to sell a product. You can't, quote unquote, pay to recruit people. You can pay them after they've been recruited, but you can't pay them on the initial recruitment. Right. There's also a 70-30 rule, which means that you have to sell at least 70% of your product before placing a new order. The way that most MLMs get around this, there's a little checkbox when you go to order that says, I have sold 70%. I agree. Yes, I have. And you just check it. It's the only way that the buy button, will turn blue or whatever. So who's really enforcing that rule? And then there has to be an end consumer. It can't just be this product that's circling within the pyramid of people buying from each other. It has to actually leave the organization and end up in a true end consumer's hand. That is the other rule, that there has to be an actual end consumer. Now, for me, I talk to victims all the time. I hear the stories of all the multi-level marketing companies, ones that are gone, ones that are still active, ones that are in the news, all the time. I have yet to find an MLM that actually follows any of these rules to a T. I've yet to find an MLM that anybody actually can go down these and say, yeah, that's actually what's happening here. In fact, what I've learned in my research is there's more people who are not actually selling things and not actually finding end consumers and not actually selling 70% before buying more. And that's just based on what people are telling me, saying, yeah, no, I know I said I sold 70, but I didn't actually. I just checked the box. I lied because I had to hit my bonus and I had to buy this stuff and I was going to lose my rank and it was the end of the month and I had to do all these things. And there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of anxiety and stress in this. And that's how it all works, unfortunately. MLM's core competency is deception. So it just doesn't work without lying. And even with these rules, the rules, it's like a set of playground rules. It's don't run, don't push, don't call each other names. It's is that actually happening? Probably not. But we have the rules posted, so I don't really know what you're supposed to, I don't really know what you expect us to do. We told everybody to play nice. It's that sort of, it's an honor system, right? And we all know that the honor system just doesn't really work.
Roberta, you left clothing company LuLaRoe in 2017, despite having become one of the few successful members of the scheme. Can you outline for us the journey of hitting the top of your game to that point when you realized that you wanted out?
So I joined in March of 2016, but I had been groomed since about October of 2015. So I've got 4 or 5 months of people on all sides of me, love bombing me, telling me, oh my God, this is so amazing. You have to do this. You're going to be amazing at this. That was literally the only thought in my head all the time, was how amazing I was going to be, and why couldn't everybody else see my potential the way that the people in LuLaRoe could see it. And so that started already like my disbelief in the outside world. Like they don't trust that I'm amazing, and the people inside LuLaRoe see it. And so like maybe the people in my life are just jealous. Maybe they don't really want me to be successful, because the people in LuLaRoe really do see my potential. And so that was already the feeling I was feeling when I signed that dotted line. So like just get in my headspace where I'm like, I'm amazing and you guys don't see it, right? Because that's what the cult was telling me, right? That's what the group, they were like, you're amazing, let's do this. So I join, I hit the ground running. I get like 9 boxes or something ridiculous delivered to my house. I unpack it. It takes a couple days. I have a launch party. I think I make like $6,000 in one night. It was insane. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do this. Let's do this.
And these are leggings, aren't they? It's the leggings that you pull on.
Yes. So they're leggings, shirts, dresses, skirts, all kinds of different things. LuLaRoe at the time I was in, I think had like 23 different styles. It's infinite. It's infinite. All of it is infinite. That's what you're going to learn as we go along, that it's all infinite. It never, ever ends, ever. And so I made all this money and I thought, man, I can do this. And I tell my upline, I'm like, aren't you so proud? Like you pretty much made almost my entire investment back in one night, like 2/3 of it. Let's do this. And she was like, oh, that's so amazing. But what you have to do now is you have to reinvest, because all that stuff you just sold, you have to rebuy it, because like you have to keep the boutique growing. Like you're doing so great, you have to buy more. So that's what I did. I put a little bit of it on the credit card and paid a good chunk down, and I put the rest back into LuLaRoe, and I purchased more inventory. And this was a very vicious cycle that happened for almost 2 years of buying a ton and then selling a ton and then rebuying a ton over and over and over again, forever, again, infinitely. And in this, and in my success of selling these buttery crotch pants, I got a lot of people to follow me, a lot of people to buy from me, and a lot of people who were interested in joining. And through the time that I was in LuLaRoe, I eventually had a team that was about 75 women. Not all of them were directly sponsored underneath me, but the team tree is what LuLaRoe calls it, or it's a pyramid. But the team tree branches out, and there were 75 women directly underneath me. Before everything started to crumble. So like all things that are too good to be true, eventually there is a breaking point, and in the beginning of 2017 that started to happen. LuLaRoe was already having legal troubles, and there was some rumors about them being a pyramid scheme, and so to squish those rumors, they decided to change their compensation plan. And it's true, they were operating as a pyramid scheme, and the compensation plan was basically like the final brick to change it so that they were a legal MLM and not an illegal pyramid scheme. And so they started working on changing this comp plan. And what it did effectively was it let everybody realize that all of the money they were actually making was on their bonuses. And people started losing a lot of money. People who had invested a lot of their time and energy and bought huge things, living way outside of their means, it was really, really devastating for a lot of people. And I had a lot of people on my team decide, look, I don't want to do this anymore. It's just too much. I'm like, I get it. I totally understand. It's not for everybody. And I was very understanding when people would leave. I was hurt on the back end. I'm not going to lie, because I'd be like, oh, now I have to find another person because that brick is gone. That brick in my pyramid, that was a load-bearing brick. I got to find another person. Again, infinite, forever.
Yeah.
So it kept happening. And then LuLaRoe decided, because of this hemorrhaging, that they were going to offer something called the 100% buyback plan. And it was a plan that came out, I want to say in like April or so. It could have been earlier, but it was in the early months of 2017. And the plan essentially was that if you had put any money and had joined LuLaRoe, they wanted to give you a risk-free option that you could leave at any time. So you don't have to leave now. Like you can keep plugging along. You don't have to leave. We'll give you all your money back. You just have to, just give it a chance, try. If you were on the fence about joining, here's a great time for you to join. It's completely risk-free. If you were on the fence about leaving, maybe give it a couple more months. And if it still doesn't work, we'll give you your money back. And for a narcissist, that sounds like a fantastic plan. They're like, nobody will leave. This is going to solve all our problems. Well, you all know exactly the opposite is going to happen, because most people are not sociopathic narcissist. And we realized that if you give people the option to leave, they're going to. And that's exactly what happened. There was a mass exodus. I lost so many people in my pyramid. And I think at that point I started to realize, like, okay, like, this is not sustainable. What's going on? And I started asking questions. You'd think in a business, when you ask questions, that people be like, oh, I'm so excited that you asked this question. I've been meaning to talk about this. Thank you so much. But no, it was like, oh, no, don't ask questions. Or I was given canned responses, like copy paste. Or, oh, let me ask our upline. That's never happened before. For things that I thought were like legitimate issues, I'm like, this is a big deal. Like, this definitely has happened before. What are you telling me this has never happened before? There's no way I'm the only isolated incident. But again, that messaging of like, I don't know, that's so weird. Like, LuLaRoe would never do this. It must be UPS. Was it the post office? Do you think like maybe your neighbor tampered with your box? It's like, what? No. This is weird. What is going on? Some of the examples of the weird things, I got soaking wet leggings that were literally drenched. I had to wring the water out of them. Like, I'm not sure why I'm being given like soaking wet clothes that are wrapped in plastic. Like, what is happening? How did this even happen? Clothes that had holes in it, and not even like the fabric had a hole. Like the stitching didn't even stitch. There's just holes where I'm like, the stitching completely missed this. There's a hole. They completely missed the seam allowance. What is happening here? Stinky things that smelled like death and chlorine. It was disgusting. Smelled my whole house up. Or I was like, what is going on? But no one could give me an answer. Nobody could give me any answer that at least satiated me, because I was like, that doesn't make sense. I have another question now. Like, I have more questions, additional questions. And questions to deception it's kryptonite, right? Like, you're never gonna be able to combat the truth with more lies. It's only gonna create more questions and more like, but that doesn't make even more sense. Like, what? And so that's what was happening. And in a high demand group, when someone asks too many questions, the way that you end that is by gifting them presence, attention, affection, whatever it is. I was given a cruise. I was given a free cruise, even though I didn't earn it. I was given, I got a watch when I hit trainer from LuLaRoe with a card from Deanne that was like, you're so amazing. I got a pair of shoes. I got a purse. I got a hat. There are all kinds of things that I would get. Oh, I just thought of you. And looking back on it now, it really all was around the times that I had questions and that my faith was wavering. Faith in the company, at least. And like, that was another thing that I unpacked after leaving. I was like, wait a second, all of that happened after I had really important questions. But again, like, nothing really, it was always in the back of my head, because that's the kind of person I'm like, there's a problem. It doesn't matter. Thanks for the cruise. Cool. There's this problem still here. I'm still getting defective product. People are still leaving. What is going on? Why can't anybody answer questions? And then to me, it got to the point where I felt like the anxiety, the stress, I couldn't handle it anymore. Like, my mental health was taking a toll. In the beginning, when I would get boxes, it was like 90% sell through within 24 hours, easy peasy. Toward the end, it was like 20%, 10%, maybe, if I was lucky. And so I'm just sitting on inventory I can't sell. And what you do, if you have inventory you can't sell, they tell you, well, just buy more inventory or swap it with other people. And I'm like, but the people I'm swapping with also have inventory they can't sell. Like, we're just swapping unsellable inventory and we're wasting our time. You're sending us on all these wild goose chases so that we don't have time to question you, and we don't have time to think, and we don't have time to talk to each other and figure all this out. Like, stop. Like, just make better stuff. I don't understand why our concerns are not being listened to. Unless, of course, this isn't actually a business. And I think, like, it was that sort of thinking where I was like, well, if this was a business, they would do this. And if this was legit, it would be like this. And even when I would go to the executive team and be like, I have an idea, like, it was always ignored. Any sort of thing that we talked about. I talked to so many people who were like, I've already brought this up. I don't know why it continues to happen. And I think the underlying theme, and looking back on it now, I see it. But again, at the time, it was like, this is weird. But looking back on it now, the underlying theme was, this is obviously a scam. Like, this is so obviously a scam. They don't care. If they cared, they would change things. If they cared, they would make it better. if they cared, I wouldn't be getting wet clothes, stinky clothes, holes in my clothes. Like, and I think at that point, I started to realize that it was not what it was. And so I had a little bit of introspection, and I started talking to some of my friends that had left LuLaRoe. And I was like, hey, you want to hang out and talk? And we would have like girls' nights or wine nights, and we would talk. And I started feeling what they were feeling. And when they were talking to me in a safe space, they were like, you got to get out of this. Like, it's a total joke. And I was like, I know it's weird, right? But I still need to figure it out. Like, what's going on? So I was doing the right things. I was trying to get the answers. I was trying to get the information, but I was staying because I felt like maybe I could also help change it for the better. And
a bit of loyalty was still there then.
Absolutely loyalty, because like I had felt like these people had changed my life. These people had saved me from like this horrible situation I was in, which really wasn't even horrible at all. Like, you know, in my vulnerability, I was sort of, you know, like led to believe that everything was worse than it was and that LuLaRoe was better than it was. And, you know, that's how they get you. That's how any high demand group, relationship, organization gets you.
Stay with us, stay away from the outside world.
Right. And so I think one of the final straws was I was literally opening up boxes. They had this webinar where they were like, all this stuff, people are, you know, there was all these people that were leaving. They had paid over $50 million in refunds. And there's all this influx of damaged clothing and returns, and like people had been sending their stuff back. And LuLaRoe had an influx of inventory. And they went on a webinar and they told us, don't worry, we're not putting the old stuff in the new boxes. It's being, first they said it was being destroyed. Then they told us that it was being sanitized, that the stuff that was resellable was being sanitized and repackaged and put back on the main line. I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. And then I started getting like really old stuff in my boxes that had like people's stickers, notations, like tags, signatures, things on on the clothes. And I'm like, someone else had this in their boutique. Like, this was in someone else's inventory. And LuLaRoe's like, nope, we're not doing that. And I was like, no, you clearly are. Like, I have this person, like the tag has a sticker on it. This is someone's inventory sticker. Someone else had this. Probably someone who quit and is still probably waiting on the refund check that you haven't paid them. What is going on? And there was a little bit of anger at that point, because I was like, now I know you're lying to me. Because before you're like, we're not doing that. And now I actually had proof in my hand where I was like, no. Like, okay, lie some more. I have the proof. And it was there. That was the moment where my cognitive dissonance was like, hi. And I was like, okay. And then I joined a Facebook group that I had been told to never join. It was a hate group. It was a cult. It was nasty. It was full of haters and bitter losers who couldn't make LuLaRoe work and who were just the worst people in the whole entire world. And I figured that I probably belonged there because that's probably how LuLaRoe was feeling about me too. And so I joined the group. And I spent the first week in that group crying, because every single thing that had happened to me, the wet leggings, the holy leggings, the stinky leggings, all of it had happened to other people. Hundreds of other people. Not just one or two. Hundreds of other people. And all of them were like, yeah, they said it was just me too. Yeah, they blamed UPS. Yeah, they blamed the rain. Yeah, they said that I left the box outside on the porch and it was my fault that things were moldy.
Must have been very liberating for you to read these accounts.
I mean, now looking back, absolutely. At the time, I didn't feel liberated at all. At the time, I felt like, I can't believe that I devoted so much time, energy, faith, trust, blood, sweat, and tears to a narcissist who just gaslit, lied, and manipulated me for almost 2 years. And, you know, going through the stages of grief, because when you leave something like this that has been everything to you, you go through those stages of grief. And I was in anger. I was very much in anger. And I was like, this isn't okay. And I was so mad. And that saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, like I embodied it. I was like, I am not the only one. I am not the only person that experienced this. I am not the only one that's cried tears over this. I am not the only one that feels crazy. I am not alone. And in that moment of realizing that I was not alone, that's where like the liberation came, where I was like, holy shit, this is like a thing. This is like a calculated thing. And everyone needs to know about it. Like, this is a calculated thing. Like, we're going to tell everybody. And I started my crusade.
And you became an activist.
In the beginning, I was absolutely an activist. Yeah. So in the anti-MLM movement, there are all different kinds of peoples, all different kinds of jobs, all different kinds of folks in there doing their best and giving us what they're the best at. And in the very beginning, when I was in my anger phase, I absolutely hit the ground running. I spoke to as many media outlets that would talk to me. I went on as many podcasts as I could. I made so much noise that Deanne actually blocked me and unfriended me and all this stuff. And I got the attention of Vice, and they came to me and they said, look, we've been reading these Bloomberg articles and these BuzzFeed articles and these Business Insider articles that you've been helping with, and there's a bigger story here. Like, let's tell it. And I was like, okay, let's tell it. And Vice, I filmed Vice in like the fall of 2018 is when we filmed it. We filmed for 3 days. We were all over Southern California. And it came out the following spring. And it just exploded. There's so many people reaching out to me going, I saw you in Vice. Thank you so much. I'm in Mary Kay. Thank you so much. I'm in Unique. Thank you so much. This happened to me and I was in Amway or whatever. You know, like so many people were reaching out to me and I'm like, this is a thing. This is even bigger than LuLaRoe. This is like a whole thing. And I just kept going. And I listened to the Dream podcast while I was filming the Vice documentary, which is Jane Marie's podcast. The first season is all about multi-level marketing and the history. I was introduced to Robert Fitzpatrick. I immediately messaged him and was we need to talk. He called me. We had a 2-hour conversation and he was like, you have an amazing grasp on what's going on. Like, you know, let's go. And I started working with some friends who had a podcast, exposing. At that point, this was now 2020, I believe. It was 2020, and Bly and Corey, who are the executive producers of LuLaRich, reached out to me, and they said, we saw the Vice documentary about a year ago. We've been following you. We've been watching this story unfold. We would love to tell a feature, like a full length. Would you be interested in signing on to help us do that as a consultant and help us find people to tell their stories? And I was like, I've been waiting for this phone call for a very long time. Absolutely. Yes. Where do I sign? How do we do this? And in November of 2020, mid-November of 2020, right after the election, they came to my house. We filmed my portion of LuLaRich. And I felt so unbelievably empowered at that moment. I really felt like, okay, like that's like I did something even bigger. Like, this is great. During all of this as well, I was working behind the scenes with the Washington State Attorney General's office for 3 years with their investigation against LuLaRoe as a whistleblower, essentially. I was a witness for them. I took the stand. I did a deposition. I had pyramid scheme evidence. And I was also an MLM expert in terms of having to answer questions about multi-level marketing and things like that on the stand as well. It was so liberating. It was amazing because at this point, I now have my bully, which is LuLaRoe's lawyer, LuLaRoe, you know, on the other end of this Zoom call asking me questions. And I was able to like stand up to my bully and be like, no, that's not what happened at all. Like, it was amazing. And I felt so empowered. And when 2021 hit, I knew that LuLaRich was coming out. I knew that I had been an activist and I had done so much, but that the one thing that I felt was really lacking in the anti-MLM movement was that nobody was really speaking specifically to the victims, what had happened to them, what they went through, why that happened, how it happened, and to let them know that they also were not alone. Because that moment of me realizing I was not alone was like the doors opening and being like, it's okay. And I knew that I needed to deliver that feeling to everybody else. And once the investigation was done, once the case was done, I got a phone call in early February from the Washington State Attorney General's office, and they were like, we have good news, LuLaRoe settled. I got the phone call the night before the press release came out. It was unbelievably exciting. I believe I cried. I was so excited. We settled for $4.75 million. The 0.75 went to pay for the investigation, which is far below like a normal amount of money. They bare bones did on that to make sure that the restitution was as much as they possibly could have for the victims. And it unfortunately was only for Washington. I would love to see more cases like this hop up in all the other states, but we were able to get about 20% back of the initial order. They got about $1,200, $1,100, something like that, which, you know, it's not a huge win, but it is a win. And a lot of people were disappointed. And I said, you know, you have to understand that, like, having any MLM admit defeat is a massive win, even if it's only $4 million, even if it's not 20 or 150 million, like some of these bigger cases. Like, the MLM, like, backing down, like, that's huge. That's huge. And once all of that was done and all my activism was done, and I was like, I am so tired. I just want to relax. I just don't want to be on the phone, like, calling people and investigating and looking for screenshots and digging through things. I just want to talk to people again. And I decided to start a podcast, and I decided that I was going to talk to the victims of multi-level marketing companies and the experts in the multi-level marketing space and the activists and the advocates. And I consider myself more of an advocate now, but I definitely wore the activist boots. I had them on the ground. I did all the work. But there are some amazing activists in the community right now. And I'm like, you know what, you guys, you take the reins. I'm very busy. And so I work more on the advocacy side now with victim outreach and victim awareness and educating, teaching people what the red flags not only look like, but what they sound like too. Because a lot of times that loaded language and that inflection in the voice is a red flag that people just didn't know was a red flag. And so I try my hardest every single day to educate and to expose it and to sort of give you the clues so that when you see something, you're like, oh, wait a second. Roberta talked about this 4 days ago. This is definitely a scam.
Yeah.
Like, that's my goal.